this week's news, deadly attacks on mosques and churches in Nigeria. The Adventist World Church votes no on women's ordination. And is this the most beautiful church in the world?
This is InFocus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Hello, thanks so much for joining us. I'm Kent Kingston, and at the news desk is my co-host, Sibel Coutet. Are you well, Sibel?
I am, thank you, Kent. And I'm quite looking forward to today's episode. Politics in Focus, that's always interesting. And you'll be chatting to Edgar Lopez.
Yes, that's right. He's a sucker for punishment. After producing more than 300 episodes of Christian television in Papua New Guinea earlier in the year, he wants to do it all again, but in Fiji this time. And if you're into mushrooms, Sibel, you'll be wanting to take notes when our resident nutritionist, Surad, yes, she'll be in talking mushrooms.
I'll look out for it. News time?
Oh, yes, Sibel.
Thanks, Kent. Christians were once again deliberately targeted during a week of bombings and shootings in Nigeria, in which about 300 people were killed. According to AP, the deadliest attacks were on 2 mosques where more than 200 worshippers were killed. At one of the mosques, a visiting Muslim cleric was speaking about the peaceful coexistence of religions. The spate of violence also saw at least 15 Christians killed during bombing and burning attacks on more than 30 churches and 300 Christian homes. As Australia and other countries tighten their asylum seeker policies, the UN's World Food Programme reports that its Middle East refugee programme needs $139 million to continue. Advocacy organisation Open Doors USA says that nearly 300,000 Syrian and Iraqi Christians are among the refugees facing food shortages. According to Christian Post, Open Doors has been providing some help to people fleeing the civil conflicts, but they're also struggling with funding. Open Doors CEO David Curry says he fears that the Christian refugees will be the last to receive help. In what's being described as one of the longest and most passionate speeches of his pontificate, Pope Francis has called for radical changes to the global economic order. Speaking in Bolivia at an event hosted by left-wing President Evo Morales, Pope Francis was scathing of greedy economic systems that leave the indigenous and poor disenfranchised and the environment devastated. He also mourned the death and suffering of Christians in the Middle East and elsewhere, calling the persecution a form of genocide. According to Religion News, Pope Francis has been criticised for his anti-capitalist statements before. This time, eyebrows were raised at the gift he received from Morales, a crucifix in the shape of a hammer and sickle. Last week, delegates representing the Seventh-day Adventist Church from around the world voted no to a proposal that would have allowed regional leaders to fully ordain women pastors in their territories. While the 58% majority vote was clear, a significant number of delegates left the General Conference meetings disappointed at the result. After the vote, re-elected President Ted Wilson pled with regional church leaders to work together in unity and refrain from moving independently on the issue. After the vote, the North American and South Pacific divisions released separate statements expressing their continued commitment to women in ministry. In both territories, women pastors are active but are commissioned rather than ordained. Adventist leaders in the Netherlands, however, stated their plans to continue to fully ordain women pastors, a policy change introduced before the General Conference meetings. The other significant changes considered at the General Conference meetings were an update of the Adventist Church's official summary of its doctrinal beliefs. Church leaders were quick to point out that while they were recommending changes to the language of the 28 fundamental beliefs, the teachings had not changed. While many of the edits were simply intended to update the wording of the official statements, some of the changes were aimed at making the Church's official stance on controversial topics clearer. Delegates voted through changes that uphold the belief in a literal 6-day creation, the definition of marriage as being between a man and a woman, and the doctrine of the Trinity. There's one easily available commercial product that's responsible for 6 million premature deaths per year: tobacco. But the World Health Organization says that although raising tobacco taxes is a proven way to reduce smoking levels, 80% of the world's countries have no tobacco taxes at all. The WHO is encouraging governments to consider how they could reduce the burden on their health systems by implementing tobacco taxes of at least 75%, as well as increasing their revenue. The Seventh-day Adventist Church, which has promoted a tobacco-free lifestyle for 150 years, generally supports any measure that will reduce smoking levels.
I think there's a lot that developing countries can learn from these experiences. Raising the tax is one of the best ways in which developing countries can go in controlling the use of tobacco.
Christian organisations were among the vocal critics after a Perth Arts Centre installed a sprinkler system designed to deter homeless people from sleeping near the building. According to WA Today, the St Vincent de Paul Society said the decision to spray homeless people beggars belief. Christian campaign organisation Common Grace organised a petition to have the scheme stopped. After the negative publicity, the Western Australian government said it would no longer use the system. The incident has drawn attention to the lack of funding for beds in homeless shelters. Because of the kindness of Australian supporters, one little girl from Papua New Guinea is looking at a much brighter future. Anitha's eyesight is so poor she would be considered legally blind in Australia. In a developing country like Papua New Guinea, she struggles to get the support she needs. But after charity organisation Operation Food for Life partnered with Sydney ophthalmology practice Personal Eyes, Anitha got the chance to travel to Australia with her carer to have her health needs thoroughly assessed. Anitha now has new glasses and her carers will be linked to health professionals back in Port Moresby who can make sure she gets the help she needs. New Zealander Barry Cox is one of those lucky people who's had the opportunity to combine two of their passions. In this case, it's God and trees, with spectacular results. It took Barry just 4 years to transplant the trees to their current location and train them into the shape of a unique and beautiful tree church. After an enthusiastic response from family and friends, Barry has opened his church and gardens to the public, including a labyrinth. The 7-layered design mimics a walk around the walls of Jericho. And that's this week's news. But before you buy a plane ticket for New Zealand, Kent, the Tree Church and its surrounding gardens are closed for the winter. Oh,
it's a bit disappointing.
Yep.
I'll have to save that trip for a bit later. Hey, don't go away. I'll be back with Politics in Focus in just a minute.
So you think you've got your future all planned out, right? Or maybe you're not sure yet. What you want to do, who you want to be. A great education matters. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Hello, welcome back. And we go now to Lyle Shelton in Canberra for our regular Politics in Focus segment. Has it been snowing there, Lyle?
Well, it's certainly been snowing on the Brindabella surrounding Canberra, Kent. A light dusting there this morning on the way to work.
Okay. Now, Lyle, we've seen some quite sobering evidence from various inquiries, reports and leaks of men, women and children being abused in Australia's offshore immigration detention centres. But it seems that major parties at the federal level at least are standing together on their tough policies, even to the extent of silencing detention centre workers who speak out. What's going on?
Yeah, there does seem to be a problem, Kent. There certainly seems to be some evidence of abuse, particularly of female detainees on Nauru. I've seen some very serious allegations of rape and even one young woman having to go to Brisbane to have an abortion, which is very tragic. I've written to the Minister for Immigration, Peter Dutton, seeking further information and just wanting to be sure that people are being treated in a humane way.
Okay, and how's the Christian community responding to these issues? Because I guess in some ways it seems that they may be one of the only voices, sort of left.
Yeah, well, certainly the National Council of Churches Refugee Task Force has been active, and I've had recent meetings with them and certainly share their concerns about these allegations of abuse. You mentioned earlier that both sides of politics are remaining fairly strong on this, and this will be tested particularly for the Labor Party at their upcoming conference at the end of the month, where their immigration spokesman Richard Marles has indicated that they will keep a strong stand against people smuggling. But let's hope that both sides can look at these allegations and ensure that if people do have to be detained offshore, that they are treated in a humane way and are not being abused.
Yeah, I guess I'm reminded of what Martin Luther King said a long time ago. You can't achieve moral ends by immoral means, and that this Tony Abbott might be able to say, well, we've stopped the boats, but on the other hand, it's the most vulnerable people who appear to have been targeted as a deterrent to achieve this. Is this a moral concern?
Yeah, it definitely is a moral concern, Kent. If there is widespread abuses of people, and if these allegations are sustained, then clearly there's a problem there. Just remembering, though, that both sides of politics are really trying to balance a really difficult situation where people smugglers have exploited the situation, have exploited vulnerable people, and of course we've seen many hundred, well over 1,000 deaths at sea, and that's what the parties are focused on trying to stop. But nonetheless, there's no excuse for treating people in an inhumane way, and I'll be very interested to see what the Minister, Peter Dutton, has to say in response to the concerns I've raised with him.
Yeah, OK. It certainly looks like we have some interesting times ahead. Thanks for being with us this week, Lyle.
Pleasure, Kent. Thanks a lot for having us.
And now it's over to James Toogood and Food in Focus.
Now, look, you're just not going to believe this, but mushrooms are high in glutamate. That's the stuff that's in monosodium glutamate, but no mono, no sodium. Just the glutamate. That's that earthy, meaty... Whoa. It just adds so much flavour to anything, Sue. It's remarkable. It really is.
It does. Natural glutamates add tremendous flavour, and the larger the mushroom, like that portobello mushroom, the stronger, the more intense those earthy flavours. So
it is earthy
quite
and
amazing.
meaty. Beautiful. Ha-ha, man food. Now, tell us about mushrooms, though. They've got many, many other benefits. Who thought they had so many vitamins?
Well, mushrooms have been used and loved by many. We're talking ancient times, from the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, but even
Mexico.
In Mexico and Asia, used for their culinary uses as well as for medicine. So they have lots going for them. So in terms of research, they've shown that they're probably very protective against particular cancers, such as breast cancer and prostate cancer. So some research from China, for example, has shown that if you consume mushrooms on a regular basis as a woman, you reduce your risk of breast cancer by about half.
Half?
Yes.
Well, the humble mushroom, that's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So apart from that, areas to do with blood pressure and cholesterol lowering, mushrooms have been shown to be effective there and to help your diet form just that. But also in terms of Alzheimer's disease, who would have thought mushrooms appear to provide benefits for the brain? And the area that I'm particularly interested in is the gut, as you probably know, and this word that's called the microbiome. That's not just the bugs that live there, but the substances that they produce. They're showing now that mushrooms actually improve that microbiome in a way that improves your own immunity and that again dampens inflammation, and that's that nasty process in the body that's surreptitious, but it's underlying and it affects all organs from your brain to your heart to your blood vessels.
Okay, now, of course, many of us have anecdotally heard that mushrooms are high in vitamin Bs. You probably knew that, so just run us quick through that.
They do provide B vitamins like pantothenic acid, biotin, folate, but they're not rich in vitamin B12. So a serve of mushrooms gives you only about 2 to 4% of your daily requirements. So not the B12, but yes, for other B vitamins.
But the most spectacular finding of all this is new information you may never have heard about. There are vitamin D
They can be. They can be.
Tell us how.
Yes. Well, firstly, you can buy vitamin D mushrooms. They need to be labelled that way. And these are mushrooms that have been exposed to a bit of light. And the mushroom actually makes the vitamin D in itself.
So here's a bowl
Or-
of mushrooms at home, and what do you do to get the vitamin D in
So
them?
at home you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
You take it out into the sunshine, leave
Okay.
it out in the sun for about an hour.
An hour?
Make their own vitamin
Enough
D.
for a day's worth.
Yes, and so this is really important for people who eat plant-based diets because vitamin D often comes in animal food. So here's an excellent non-animal food that can give you lots of vitamin D.
You would never have guessed it's a vitamin D sink. You really should try it and get your vitamin D up and get it met for the day.
Well, 1 in 3 people in Australia are deficient in vitamin D.
Yeah.
So vitamin D mushrooms are one way of boosting
I'm going to be
your
putting
level.
mine in the sunshine now. Tell us the different. Look at the range.
So there's many. Everyone's very familiar with the common button mushrooms. They're the little white ones, particularly in Western countries. So you need about, on average, 3 of those a day. It's about 100 grams. And
have the
as
little
they
swish
open
ones?
up, well, let me first tell you about the flats. So the common ones, as they mature, they open up and we call them flats.
Okay.
And when they're really large, they're called portobello mushrooms.
okay.
So, you know, one of these is like a piece of steak on the barbie.
It has that
it's
nice earthy
substantial.
flavour. Yeah.
And then you've got other mushrooms called Swiss browns.
Okay.
So they've got more of a brown surface. They also have a stronger flavour. You can use those in many ways, slice them up into salads, stir fries, and so on.
We've only got a brief time. Can you just show us these
Yes, let me show you
fascinating
these
ones?
exotic ones
Yeah.
because these are used in Asia. So here we've got what's called black fungus. This is the
Okay.
dried version.
Okay.
When you add water to it, it hydrates and it's used in food for texture.
Ah.
So you slice it up, you'll often find it in spring rolls,
You'd cook it
in
normally.
soups, in stir fries. It's fabulous. And then we have other dry mushrooms.
Yeah,
My
try
my favourite by far, are what's called porcini mushrooms.
Ah, okay.
Which, if
It
you
even
go at the right
sounds-
time to
yeah.
Italy,
Yeah. Oh, it is
they're
Italian.
to die for. They really are. These are the dried version. And then, of course, there's the dry Chinese mushrooms. And this is a fresh version of the shiitake.
Yep.
Now, mostly in Japan, they use dried shiitake for medicinal reasons. And then we've got even more exotic ones.
Yes, show these quickly.
Enoki,
Yeah.
the king brown oyster.
Oh, king brown
Oysters,
oyster.
fabulous for stir fries. Shimeji and naminko, I think
Okay.
they're called. So
What
lots
were
of
these
different
little
ways
moist
you
ones
can
called
use.
again?
Well, that's actually called fungus, black fungus.
Oh,
You can
black
get
fungus.
white fungus, black fungus, used mostly for its textural properties because
Okay.
that doesn't have a lot of flavour.
Yeah.
But often you'll find, particularly in Asian countries, they use them in combination.
Oh,
and in
okay.
European countries like Poland, where they also harvest them from the wild, they use them in many ways to produce savoury dishes. So delicious
Oh.
and an excellent way of lowering your salt content and your meat
Just
content in
amazing.
meals because of that massive amount of natural glutamate.
Look, it almost looks like a truffle. It's just got that black. I've never tried one. You just got to. Even raw,
Crunch.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
Interesting texture.
Incredible, Sue. Thank you so much. Mushrooms.
Unearth ancient civilizations with archaeological diggings. This bi-monthly magazine will keep you up to date with news and insights from the fascinating world of archaeology. Subscribe online or ask for archaeological diggings at your newsagent.
Hi, welcome back. Well, have you ever been chucked into the deep end, ever bitten off more than you can chew, ever felt like the bunny in the headlights? Well, I think Edgar Lopez has been in that situation.
Oh, you can say that again.
So earlier this year, Ed, you were in PNG for a month.
Yes.
And you don't really have much in the way of like television background, and you were told, right, pal, you're in charge of making, what was it, 200?
300 programs.
300 television programs.
Yes.
Wow.
Let me tell you, it wasn't just 1 month. In fact, it was 2 months.
Yeah.
I spent 2 months. It was probably one of the hardest, if it's not the hardest ever project I've ever taken in my life. It was the biggest challenge, but it was worth it every single minute because we saw the hand of God in everything that we did during this project, Mega Project Hope.
Wow, wow. So in the lead up to, you know, the time when all these people came from around the world to shoot all these Christian television programs, you know, back to back, go, go, go. How were you feeling, like, emotionally and spiritually?
Look, in order to take this challenge seriously, you need to pray and fast. And those are the things that I actually did before I started. I knew it was going to be a huge challenge, and it was. The moment that I arrived to Port Moresby Airport, I felt this burden on me. I felt this heaviness on me. And guess what? The moment I arrived, I sent an SMS to my right-hand man. He sends me a message, said, "I'm sorry, I've got malaria."
Wow.
Now, what do I do from then? That's when I go in my knees and I pray and I say, "Lord, we've got to produce 300 television programs." And guess what? I know you're going to find a way. And I was reminded of this verse from the Bible, Romans 5:5. You know, hope will not disappoint. And that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
Hope did not disappoint.
Wow. Now, they call Papua New Guinea the land of the unexpected. And so right-hand man, you know, fix a guy gets malaria. What are some other barriers that you had to confront there?
Okay. Once we arrived in PNG, we were supposed to have the equipment. You know, we had all this equipment coming from America. The equipment was there in customs, but they couldn't release it because there were issues and
stuck
problems,
on the docks in a container or something. Yeah.
All that it was there, and they were supposed to arrive. The whole equipment was supposed to arrive 3 weeks prior, but it was actually there, been held in customs for all this time. And we need this equipment because I had my engineers coming in to set up all the equipment. So in fact, instead of doing 30 days, we had to do 20 days because we waited almost a week for this project to take place due to the lateness of the release of the equipment.
Wow. Okay. And then there was what, generator, air conditioning.
Yes.
There was some protest that resulted in a fuel shortage over
Correct.
all of Port Moresby.
Correct.
You had to cope with all these things.
It was amazing. You know, it just all of a sudden shortage of fuel all around Port Moresby. We had all these cars. We had 3 crews that need to go, you know, to different places, and we had to be very careful with our fuel because we had pretty much nothing. We had nothing. In fact, after a week, we were praying, and I went to put fuel in my car, and it took me almost 2 hours to get fuel in my car.
Just queuing up, waiting for the the petrol station.
That's right. But God led the project all the way through, and look, it was amazing. You know.
I mean, you say God led the project all the way through. I mean, is that just a Christian cliche, a throwaway comment, or can you actually give me some specific examples?
Look, I'll give you a typical example. We had a health project, okay, a health program that we needed to do, and one of the persons who I assigned to print some of the big posters that you normally have in the background, you know, we couldn't do it. He couldn't do it because the printing companies couldn't do it. There was failure on the computers, so they had to do it the following day. But it was too late because the program was due at 8 a.m. next morning to do. So what do? It was almost 7:30 in the afternoon. So I'll ask my technical guy, Hector, and I said, Hector, let's go and do this. You know, this program must go to air tomorrow, or else we're going to lose. All these specialists and doctors have been, you know, queued up to do all these interviews. So we thought, you know, 7:30, where do we find a place in Port Moresby? Imagine, Port Moresby, you find a printing place
that's open at night.
Yes. We couldn't find anywhere. Anyway, all of a sudden, we just walked back to our car when I found a friend. And my friend said, "What are you guys doing?" And I said to him, "You know what I'm doing? I'm waiting for a miracle right now." And I share my experience with him. And he said, hang on, let me just look at my phone. He started looking at his phone, and he said, look, I've got a printing company, but I think this printing company it might be closed, but let's go and check. I'll take you there. All of a sudden, we are there, and they did everything. By the time around 10:30 at night, we have all the printing done.
Wow.
And by 3 a.m. in the morning, I should say, we had the studio ready to go for the next day. So that on itself is a miracle by God.
Wow.
No one else can.
Wow.
I credit that.
So were you and the team there in PNG, I imagine you would have spent a fair bit of time in prayer and...
Yeah, definitely. In fact, there were moments that it was so tense that we sent SMSs to all the churches in the area to pray for us. And all the churches were praying for this project.
Wow.
And that's amazing.
Wow. And end result, how many programs? Half-hour episodes, how many?
Half-hour episodes, 303.
Wow.
Half-hour episodes.
Of how many different programs?
Programs, you had
series?
about 8 different series, including health, children, youth. In fact, we had the Deputy Chief Justice of the Supreme Court doing a whole series of programs on religious liberties. And I think that's a big...
And that was a bit unexpected, wasn't it, that series? That came out of nowhere?
Definitely,
wow.
Definitely was.
Absolutely incredible. And so these are local TV programs with PNG people on the screen, and I guess with other people trained up so that in the future they'll be able to continue to produce local Christian content in that country. Now, Ed, I understand that you're a bit of a sucker for punishment and that this experience wasn't enough, and that you're now starting to plan something similar for, what, next year, to 2016 in April, is that right?
Correct. It actually it goes from the 10th of April to the 12th of May 2016. But the difference that we have in this project is that we're going to be using many different countries rather than just the one.
Okay. This time you're based in Fiji, is it right?
Correct. We are based in Fiji, but we also are filming some of the stuff in different parts of the islands around there. You know, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Tonga, and all the other islands, Samoa. Yes, yes. So we are hoping that 300 television programs will be produced.
Oh, so you want to match that incredibly high bar you've already set?
By God's grace, we are hoping that we can. If we are able to do more than 300, you know, even better. But 300 is what we've targeted. Wow.
Okay. So the PNG project earlier this year was only possible because you had volunteers come in, you had people from all over the world to help out. Is it a similar sort of arrangement this time?
What we're trying to do is exactly the same thing. And we had 30 international volunteers in PNG from 17 different nationalities, and we are hoping that we will have the same amount of people to do the same thing here in Fiji. So we are looking for volunteers in different areas.
There you go.
Areas such as editing, directing, producing. Also, we're looking for musicians, professional musicians.
Okay.
Because we find that nature shots are lovely once you put it on television, and people just love listening to beautiful music, you know, to relax them.
Some gospel music.
Definitely, definitely. Gospel music.
Okay.
So yeah, those are the type of people that we are looking for as volunteers.
All right. So well, if you have any of those skills or you're interested in knowing more, get hold of you, Edgar. Would that be the best way to go about it?
Yes. Look, there will be a website, hopechannel.com, and on the main page there will be a section where it says Project Hope.
There you go. Okay, there's details right there on your screen. Thanks so much for your time today, Edgar. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for giving me the opportunity.
We'll see you straight after the break.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Hello. Now, just a reminder before we go that this week's program is online to watch and share, and our web address is, of course, record.net.au.
That's right, and from our website you can also sign up to our weekly email newsletter telling you all about the latest articles and videos.
Yes, please do. Thanks for your company. We'll see you next week on Record in Focus.
God bless.